Midtown, Misfits, Midtown, Misfits, Midtown, Misfits, Midtown, Misfits, Midtown, Misfits, Midtown, Misfits.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome back, Misfits, and welcome back to a new episode. Today, we are continuing the Bamboozled series.
We sure are. They've been bamboozled. Okay.
Yeah, I really hope y'all enjoyed last week's episode. It was the intro Bamboozled episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hope that you're enjoying this theme of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Because we're having fun with it.
We are.
And we really like saying bamboozled.
It's just a fun word. So,
It is.
yeah. So, hope you enjoy it as well.
Yeah.
Feel free to join us in the bamboozled lingo.
Yes, please. So we mentioned last week that although the name sounds fun, what these people went through was not fun, and we just need to clarify that.
Yes.
We don't want to just like set your expectations. You're like, this is going to be a fun episode, and it's like, oh no, they went through something terrible.
No, it's really not.
No,
the game of life.
No, it's people's lives. Yes.
And it wasn't fun.
Literally.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't fun. And just to clarify, for those joining us for the first time, first we recommend that you listen to last week's episode.
Yeah.
And we want to clarify that when we say bamboozled, we mean that they were lied to or deceived.
Yes.
So again, not fun.
Not fun for anybody. And today it's going to be specific to, a couple people, if you will. But anytime anyone's lied to or deceived, no fun. But we're just trying to keep, the interest high.
Keep it light, you know what I'm saying? Keep it light.
Before we hit you with the not so fun stuff.
Exactly. We're about to go into the not so fun stuff. So,
but very interesting stuff. So,
oh, most certainly.
Just because what they went through wasn't fun doesn't mean it's fascinating and interesting and important to know.
Yeah, and it also doesn't mean that it didn't end in a fun way.
Yeah, it could have ended fun.
That's also a possibility. Yeah.
So stay tuned.
Exactly. So today we're talking about Moses.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. And it's very exciting because although we have definitely mentioned Moses before on the podcast, I don't think we've ever done a whole episode about him. So we're very excited about it.
So we definitely need to revisit Moses later on to talk a little bit more about some other stuff that he's done. Because he's very pivotal in,
very much so.
in who we are now and Jesus and everything else. So, but yeah, that's actually interesting.
Yeah.
We haven't done a specific one on him. So that's kind of cool.
It's kind of shocking, to be honest.
Honestly. What were we been doing these last 2 years?
What have we been doing? And also, it shows you the vastness of the Bible, that a character or a person so pivotal as Moses, that we've actually never done a whole episode about him. In 35 at this point?
Yeah, this will be 140. So that's crazy that we've gone this long. And I mean, he's been mentioned. He's been part of other things.
He has.
But yeah, you're right. I don't think we've been let's talk about Moses.
For some reason, he hasn't been the main character.
And yeah, he really needs to be. So I'm glad this one is a big part. Yeah.
Yeah, he's having his moment.
Yes.
And we'll bring him back.
Yeah.
We'll bring it back.
And we're going to summarize some stuff, but we can definitely come back to those summarized things and bring that, give you the details, the behind the scenes, if you will.
Most definitely. Yeah. So yeah, we're going to talk about Moses today. And the particular story about Moses that we're going to talk about, because of course the man is mentioned very many times in the Bible, but we're going to talk about the story of Moses and the golden calf that we find in Exodus 32.
Okay.
However, just like last week, we're going to give you a brief summary of how Moses found himself in this situation in the first place.
Right.
For those of you who don't know or don't remember, and then we'll get into the rest.
Sounds good.
And again, like Yadi said, this is going to be very paraphrasy until we actually get to the Bible verses.
Yes.
But we're going to give you the chapters where it's at. You can check us. We always try to line everything we say up with the Bible because we're not trying to be bamboozled ourselves.
Exactly. We're not trying to be deceitful or lying.
No.
To y'all, to each other, none of that. So, yeah, we're trying to do our best to be unbamboozled.
Yes. Yeah. So if for some reason we say something and you're like, I don't know where that is, it's just going to be in the book of Exodus. That's what I can guarantee you.
And feel free to comment and ask us, because we can definitely clarify some stuff. But this is very much paraphrased, summarized, very concise. So
definitely.
And we'll probably repeat that several times throughout this episode, because there's a lot
because
going
we like
on.
to be repeaty.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here we go. So for general info, in the book of Exodus, we see a recap of the story of the Israelites. As many of you know, the Israelites were under Egyptian rule, and God calls Moses to rescue them. And for that outrageous moment in the Bible, please refer to Exodus 3, and you can learn more about the burning bush and how that because that's just outrageous what happens in that chapter. Yeah.
That whole moment, Moses and God and all that. Yeah.
Yes. Anywho, so God calls Moses to rescue the Israelites and take them to what we know as the promised land, which is the land of Canaan. And Moses has many questions. And in the Fran and Yadi paraphrase, he says, I am not the man for the job.
I don't think it's me, God. That's what he's saying.
Yes. And God is so merciful, and fully knowing Moses, he sends his brother Aaron to help him. He doesn't, it's one of those moments where God doesn't actually address what you're saying, but he has the solution and just tells you the solution, because he's like, I'm actually not going to talk to you about that anymore.
He just sees Moses like really struggling here. He's like, I'm just going to give you Aaron so we can just get on with the show.
Yeah, he's like, but I'm not the man for the job, and I do this, and I stutter, and I do this, and he's like, Aaron's on his way. Yeah. That's literally what he says.
I got you an assistant. He'll be here any minute.
Yeah, he's actually on his way. Yeah. So if we could just change the conversation now. Yeah.
Just sit down for a moment, Moses. Someone's coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I bet he felt so relieved too. He was like, oh, my brother's coming.
Oh, yeah, that's very comforting.
Yeah.
God's like, I got you. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. So now, like always, there is way more that goes on into the story, right? Yes. That was kind of like a very concise a situation when it comes to the burning bush and Aaron coming to Moses to help him, and when Moses gets called. But we do need you to read it for yourself, because when you do, you'll see that although Moses thought he was very unqualified, he was actually the perfect guy for the job because of how he grew up and who raised him.
Right.
And all of those details are in that in Moses' story, because you'll see that. And that's important when you think of Moses, and even when you think of yourself and God is calling you to do things that you're like, oh, I am not qualified for that.
That's true.
And because of how you were raised, because of your experiences, because of everything that you've been through, good and bad, you're actually the perfect person for that particular job that God has for you. So in a sense, we are very much like all Moses.
Yes. So God sees things that we don't, and that's what he did with Moses. Moses couldn't see it in himself, but God was like, no, you're good. You're the right guy. So
exactly. Yeah. And he uses all of our experiences and circumstances for his glory. And it's a very concisely shown to us in his marvelous story. So please go read it.
Yes.
But anyway, so now Moses is called, and he has an assignment to free the Israelites. And even though he thought he was very unqualified, he stood up to the job, and he's like, okay, Aaron, let's go. And after many ups and downs with the leader of Egypt called the Pharaoh finally lets them go, and they are on their way to the promised land. Now, again, a lot goes into that to actually happen for them to be let go, but then that's where we're going to leave it. And shameless plug, we did an episode on Pharaoh, and we think you should listen to it because it'll help you understand who and what the Pharaoh was and what they did.
Oh, yes.
Like what their title was and what their responsibilities were.
What their role was. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it'll help you understand this situation with Moses as well, and why he had to go talk to Pharaoh and all the things.
Yeah, that's good.
But now we're almost all caught up. So he was called, he said no, then he said yes, then he went to talk to the Pharaoh, and then they were free. So that's where we're at. And in Exodus 19, this is when they leave. So they leave Egypt. And in Exodus 19, we find Moses and all of the Israelites in the Sinai wilderness. And in this wilderness, God tells Moses to tell the Israelites to consecrate themselves because he was coming to talk to them. And here is where we start reading word for word, because it's very important to understand the rest of this episode.
Get the details right. Yeah.
Yes. So we're going to start in Exodus 19:9. And as always, this is in the NLT. So the Bible says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, I will come to you in a thick cloud, Moses, so the people themselves can hear me when I speak with you. Then they will always trust you. So here we see God wants to speak to Moses in front of the people, essentially. And this seems to be the plan until we fast forward to Exodus 20, verses 18 to 21. So in verse 18, it says, when the people heard the thunder and the loud blast of the ram's horn, and when they saw the flashes of lightning and the smoke billowing from the mountain, they stood at a distance, trembling with fear. And they said to Moses, you speak to us, and we will listen, but don't let God speak directly to us, or we will die. Don't be afraid, Moses answered them, for God has come in this way to test you, and so that your fear of him will keep you from sinning. As the people stood in the distance, Moses approached the dark cloud where God was. So, of course, there's a lot happening here.
Yeah.
God approaches Moses and the Israelites. He's like, hey, I want to talk to the people. And this is going to give you validity, essentially, right?
Yeah,
If they see you talking to me, they're going to always respect you. And it'll be easier, essentially, for him to be their leader, right?
Yeah. But they were scared.
Yes, they were scared. There was a lot happening.
Yeah.
And then you see the smoke and the lightning and the mountain and all of these things. And it's like, I can kind of see that.
And I mean, I think it also makes sense because they had been in slavery and under Egypt's rule for so long that I don't the Bible doesn't tell us, but I feel like they had to be reintroduced to God, in a way, because they had been living under this other authority. And so to be basically, come back and get to know God again, it was scary for them. We know Moses, we can talk to you, but this seems like a lot for us. It's overwhelming. And so they were I don't this doesn't feel I'm scared, right? It's too much, because they really didn't know God, in that personal way.
Yeah, so that was Exodus 20, 18 to 21, and then we fast forward to Exodus 24, verses 12 to 18, and the Bible says, then the Lord said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain, stay there, and I will give you the tablets of stone on which I have inscribed the instructions and commands so you can teach the people. So Moses and his assistant Joshua set out, and Moses climbed up the mountain of God. Moses told the elders, stay here and wait for us until we come back. Aaron and Hur are here with you. If anyone has a dispute while I am gone, consult with them. Then Moses climbed up the mountain, and the cloud covered it. And the glory of the Lord settled down on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. On the seventh day, the Lord called for Moses from inside the cloud. To the Israelites at the foot of the mountain, the glory of the Lord appeared at the summit like a consuming fire. Then Moses disappeared into the cloud as he climbed higher up the mountain. He remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So now, as we've, of course, been jumping around, this story is completely cohesive, right? It's very linear.
Yes, yeah.
We just jumped around because in the middle, there's instructions that God is giving Moses that don't necessarily pertain to Moses and the golden calf, which is the story that we're trying to get to. But again, very important.
Yeah, just to build you up to the moment that we're trying to get to. Trying to give you the gist, the main text that speaks a little more specific on where Moses was, what he was doing, kind of what led to what we're trying to pinpoint.
Yes, the incident. Exactly. And here we are. We've arrived.
We made it.
So now Moses is at the top of the mountain receiving instructions and fellowshipping with God. And when he goes up the mountain, we don't see in the Bible that he has any idea how long he's going to be up there. And it turns out, right, as we're reading the narrative, it's actually 40 days and 40 nights, which has so much significance, but that's a different episode.
Yeah, that's a whole thing on its own. But
yeah, the amount of time is just, I just need you to know that if you didn't know, it's important. 40 means a lot. It points to Jesus and all of the things. And we will talk about that some other time. Yeah.
But yeah, so here we are. We're in Exodus 32. And so in this chapter, Moses is now coming down from the mountain from this extended stay in the Lord's presence, right? So to tell you the story, we really have to read the whole chapter, because if not, we would really be leaving things out, doing a disservice to you. We want to make sure you get get all the meat, if you will. Make sure you get all the details from this.
Yeah, this is where we send the episode home.
Yeah, so we don't want you to miss it. Read along with us. This is, again, chapter 32 of Exodus, but it's important to kind of see the chain of events, if you will. So starting with verse 1, it says, when the people saw how long it was taking Moses to come back the mountain, they gathered around Aaron. Come on, they said, make us some gods who can lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses who brought us here from the land of Egypt. So Aaron said, take the gold rings from the ears of your wives and sons and daughters and bring them to me. All the people took the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. Then Aaron took the gold, melted it down, and molded it into the shape of a calf. When the people saw it, they exclaimed, O Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Aaron saw how excited the people were, so he built an altar in front of the calf. Then he announced, tomorrow will be a festival to the Lord. The people got up early the next morning to sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings. After this, they celebrated with feasting and drinking, and they indulged in pagan revelry. The Lord told Moses, quick, go down the mountain. Your people whom you brought from the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. How quickly they have turned away from the way I commanded them to live. They have melted down gold and made a calf, and they have bowed down and sacrificed to it. They are saying, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Then the Lord said, I have seen how stubborn and rebellious these people are. Now leave me alone so my fierce anger can blaze against them, and I will destroy them. Then I will make you, Moses, into a great nation. But Moses tried to pacify the Lord his God. O Lord, he said, why are you so angry with your own people whom you brought from the land of Egypt with such great power and such a strong hand? Why let the Egyptians say their God rescued them with the evil intention of slaughtering them in the mountains and wiping them from the face of the earth? Turn away from your fierce anger. Change your mind about this terrible disaster you have threatened against your people. Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You bound yourself with an oath to them, saying, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven, and I will give them all of the land that I have promised to your descendants, and they will possess it forever. So the Lord changed his mind about the terrible disaster he had threatened to bring to his people. Then Moses turned and went down the mountain. He held in his hands the 2 stone tablets inscribed with the terms of the covenant. They were inscribed on both sides, front and back. These tablets were God's work. The words on them were written by God himself. When Joshua heard the boistering noise of the people shouting below them, he exclaimed to Moses, it sounds like war in the camp. But Moses replied, no, it's not a shout of victory, nor the wailing of defeat. I hear the sound of celebration. When they came to the camp, Moses saw the calf and the dancing, and he burned with anger. He threw the stone tablets to the ground, smashing them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf they had made and burned it. Then he ground it into powder, threw it into the water, and forced the people to drink it. Finally, he turned to Aaron and demanded, what did these people do to you to make you bring such terrible sin upon them? Don't get so upset, my lord, Aaron replied. You yourself know how evil these people are. They said to me, make us gods who will lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses who brought us here from the land of Egypt. So I told them, whoever has gold jewelry, take it off. When they brought it to me, I simply threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. Moses saw that Aaron had let the people get completely out of control, much to the amusement of their enemies. So he stood at the entrance to the camp and shouted, all of you who are on the Lord's side, come here and join me. And all the Levites gathered around him. Moses told them, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Each of you, take your swords and go back and forth from one end of the camp to the other. Kill everyone, even your brothers, friends, and neighbors. The Levites obeyed Moses' command, and about 3,000 people died that day. Then Moses told the Levites, today you have ordained yourselves for the service of the Lord, for you obeyed him even though it meant killing your own sons and brothers. Today you have earned a blessing. The next day Moses said to the people, you have committed a terrible sin, but I will go back up to the Lord on the mountain. Perhaps I will be able to obtain forgiveness for your sin. So Moses returned to the Lord and said, oh, what a terrible sin these people have committed. They have made gods of gold for themselves. But now if you will only forgive their sin, but if not, erase my name from the record you have written." But the Lord replied to Moses, "No, I will erase the name of everyone who has sinned against me. Now go, lead the people to the place I told you about. Look, my angel will lead the way before you, and when I come to call the people to account, I will certainly hold them responsible for their sins." Then the Lord sent a great plague upon the people because they had worshipped the calf Aaron had made. So, whew,
My.
how quickly things escalated, turned, and kind of went crazy, if you will.
Very, very quickly. The first thing I want to mention is just when the Israelites approach Aaron and they say, "We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses." Like, they don't know him. The fellow, that one guy who's been leading us literally out of slavery.
Like, he has fought for y'all to get out of slavery. He has come with a message from God. Like, he has shown miracles and all these different things. And all of a sudden, he's just some fellow? That was one of the first things I noticed. Yeah.
It's like they don't know his last name. You know what I mean? Like that guy, John.
Yeah.
John, I don't know.
With the
John,
hair.
is it
Like,
Smith? John, he's always wearing polo shirts. That guy.
Yeah. He like had khakis on
gosh.
earlier. No, you don't. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's.
He always sits on that corner. No?
Yeah, it just sounds like they were like, this guy, we don't know him, but you know, he's over here, and apparently he's talking to God, and we don't know what happened to him. Like, we don't know how long he's going to take. So, you know, they got tired of waiting.
Literally, which kind of tells me, when you look at the beginning of the story, like Moses is giving instructions, right? He's like, y'all come with me, and then I'll keep going. And then he was like, Aaron and Hur are going to stay here and all the things. But it feels like when he gave instructions to all of these leaders, the leaders didn't communicate to the people.
Yeah.
This is what it feels like.
It didn't trickle down.
Like they didn't say, right, like Aaron and Hur didn't like convene all of the Israelites and say, "Hey, people of God, as you saw, he's going up the mountain, but he's going to be back.
Yeah.
We don't know when, but that's what's happening right now. So we just wanted to inform you. All right, y'all have a good rest of your day." Like nothing.
And also, like, the reason Moses had to go by himself is because y'all were scared. So, like, give the man a minute, right? Like, he's going to go and bring the message that God wanted to speak to you directly. But we understand that was scary. That was a lot. So he's going to go. And he's going to go get that message and be back. So let's just all hold tight, right? Like, we're not in Egypt anymore. We're in the wilderness. So, like, we got nowhere to go. So let's just, like, make the best of the situation. Let's just hang tight and, you know, just trust that if the guy fought to get us out of Egypt, like, he'll be back. Like, he'll be back. And he's like, we don't know. This guy seems to be taking too long. Can we do something about this?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They didn't have faith at the time.
No, it really
got
dwindled really quickly. Yeah.
They freaked out.
And again, like, we go back to, like, they went back to what they knew, right? So the very, like, verse 2 is like, or like that same verse. And Aaron's like, all right, well, let's do what y'all know. Let's put something together here. Let's build a God for y'all. Because that's what the people were comfortable with. That's what they were familiar with.
Yeah.
And so Aaron, instead of standing up, right, and like putting his foot down and be like, nah, like Moses went to go talk to God. Like, we're supposed to be patient here. He just gave in. He's like, oh, you guys aren't going to listen to me. You don't believe it.
And pretty easily, mind you.
Yes. Like, he didn't even there's no hesitation. He's just like, all right.
No. And the thing about Aaron is that every time, if I'm not mistaken, right? Every time Moses went to talk to Pharaoh, he was there.
Yeah, he had to, because that was the whole
deal. So
he
saw the miracles. He saw everything that they did. And he's still like, yeah, okay, go get your stuff.
Yeah.
And we'll figure something out.
But I think, like, again, it speaks to the fact that, like, even Aaron being part of the Levites, being like, at least assuming that he had a better relationship with God, like, even he was easily swayed and easily influenced because he had been under Egypt for so long. Like, it was just so easy for him to just give in. Like, I don't want to fight with the people, give them what they want. Like, it's, you know, it's out of my control.
And he was also the minority too, right? Like, he was part of the leaders, but like the Israelites were, there was a lot of Israelites against like what maybe felt like one man. And he's like, Moses isn't here to back me up.
Yeah.
You know what? They might kill me. Yeah. Go get your earrings.
And again, like, we're reading the scripture. We don't know what tone they were telling him all this stuff. If they were like being really aggressive or in his face. But it just feels like he didn't really try to like guys, let's just give it a minute. He was like, all right, let's do this. What do y'all need? And really just gave in and whatever y'all want. Okay, let's do this. And it's interesting how they tried to like mix the two, right? Because what Aaron is saying, like, he's still wanting to like obey God, right? He's like, I'm going to build an altar for the Lord. Mm-hmm. It wasn't little L, little G God. It was the Lord, as in our God. But the people were wanting to celebrate this calf and do celebration for the calf, not for God. Or like through the calf, I guess, for God, but like not acknowledging God directly. And so it was like, Aaron was like, well, at least they're celebrating. Like they're still... like they're still doing this.
He was trying to course correct a whole disaster,
right.
Is what he was trying to do.
And kind of like putting a Band-Aid on it, or like trying to pretend like what they were doing, he was going to incorporate it with what they were actually supposed to be doing. And obviously that doesn't work.
Yeah, but it reminds me of like before you fully understand or surrender everything to the Lord, it's like that's what we try to do, right? We try to like pray and burn incense or charge your crystals, but also read the Bible. And it's like, okay, all right, friend.
I'm praying and manifesting. Like, no, you can't do both.
You got to pick one. You can't do both.
Yeah.
But it's just a lack of education. And that's obviously what we see here.
So they had really gotten astray, really had gotten away from like the practices of serving God, and just really had become, I guess, kind of part of the Egyptian culture, right? Because we see it, how easily they like turn to all of this. So then of course Moses gets, God tells him like, you need to get back there. Like things are going crazy. They're doing things. I mean, he reveals to him like what's going on. You really need to go and get this. So what should have been like a really beautiful moment of Moses coming with the tablets, with the message that God himself wrote on these tablets on the stone, he comes back to people like not even acknowledging the fact that Moses went to talk to God, right? They're like in their own party. They're celebrating this calf and themselves and all this other stuff, when they should have been anxiously waiting, like, what does God have? What is the message that, like we were afraid to hear it directly from him, but like there is a message here, and like he pulled us out of Egypt for a reason. So like they should have been, but unfortunately they were, so used to their old ways that like that didn't interest them, that they weren't patient enough. Yeah.
It's crazy because this is the whole like, it's the perfect picture of like waiting on God.
Yeah. And like you don't know the time, but
yes. And it's like, okay, wait, but how long? No, I just like wait.
Exactly.
And what happens when we start to get antsy waiting on God? Like that's what.
Yeah. And want to rely on what we know, right? Like what they knew was this. And so that's what they went back to. Like they relied on their own understanding, on their own knowledge of like how things should have been going, and not trusting in like God's, like you said, God's timing and God's message. And unfortunately, like even the ones around them, like we said, like Aaron, they also gave in. So even though they necessarily weren't the ones participating, they were allowing it, right? And not like standing up for God in a way, and being like a voice.
Yeah. Aaron was essentially like a whole stumbling block.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't like fully complicit, but he was a brick in front of them where it's like, I tripped.
Exactly. So we see like, again, like where this moment should have been, like Moses should have been able to come down the mountain and been able to share this message. And he gets bamboozled. He gets bamboozled because the people are like, we're not interested in that. We want to just party with our new golden calf, if you will. Mm-hmm. So Moses doesn't necessarily get tricked, right? Like there's not trickery in that sense, but he does get, in a sense, like lied to or deceived in what I guess the expectation was. One of Aaron being like his right hand, his brother, the one that was in charge at the time. And two, for the people, like you guys know you're the people of God, even though you don't understand everything, like you know who you are, but they hadn't really accepted or received that identity quite yet. We can see that. So like the people turned. And so he was thinking it was going to be a certain way. And we see that because he comes down and it's like, he's just upset. He's angry that it's not what what should have been, what it was the intention of him going to the mountain and receiving this message.
Yes, literally so angry that he takes the tablets that God wrote on with his finger, figuratively, of course, but the Bible says finger, and he broke them.
So he thought they'd be fine.
That must have been a whole moment.
Yeah, to come down.
I could hear people gasping just.
Well, I feel like one
he's
part,
back. It's that fellow
One
Moses.
part was like gasping and like, oh my gosh, he's actually back now. And then another part was so out of it that they were just like, woo. Because they like no expectation. Because this fella just left, so we're just gonna party it up.
No, they forgot about him for sure.
So the ones that were kind of expectant, yes, they were like, oh my gosh, she did come back. Oh no, like, what are we doing? Maybe even Aaron was like, because it does sound if you read, as I was reading the text, like he wanted to kind of, well, it's them. They're just crazy. Like, they're wild. I can't tame them. I just threw it and this calf came out. It's like, actually, it says that you shaped it, so I don't think it just came out. I think you were like giving in, to what they were asking for. So yeah. So Moses comes back and is like, Aaron, how dare you? I thought you would be in charge. I thought you would, hold the troops together. And he didn't, So yeah, a different type of bamboozled than the one we talked about last episode. But still, he, the expectation of what was supposed to happen and things just were not. It was totally opposite. So unfortunately, like we said, even Aaron, everybody they just turn to idol worship instead. So like the last episode, we see this is a picture of humanity making a terrible mistake. And of course, we also see God's redemption, as always. God shows us how much he hates idols and how much he loves us. So what Moses did with the calf is a representation of like just how much God doesn't like idols, but it also shows us, that he loves us and he wants better for us, right? So the mere fact that he hates idols shows us how much he loves us because he knows what's best for us, and having anything or anyone as our focus other than God is always going to turn badly. So just like in this situation, it did not go well. Anytime we do it as well, and we do know. Take it from us. We do know when we focus on other things that are not God, it doesn't quite go like it should, like God's ways are always better than ours.
Always.
So, let's not bamboozle ourselves into these things like the people of Israel did.
Literally. Yeah. I think this story is, when you break it down, because we didn't break it down too much because, of course, it's a very dense story. There's a lot happening here. But it just so interesting because it shows us that, number one, it reminds us of what most of the Old Testament is about and what God is trying to really just implant and imprint in these people, which is remember what God has already done.
Yes.
Which we as people tend to forget. And then also we see that in the Old Testament, especially in the Israelites, where like something would happen and then some time would pass and then they would forget, or the next generation would know about it, or they would just forget to talk about it. And it just kind of, you keep seeing generation of people that don't know God because the previous generation didn't tell them.
Yes.
Or they didn't tell them about the miracle or the Ark of the Covenant or the whatever. We have to make, like, whatever is important to God is important to us. And we see that in this story. When you read the bulk of the chapters that we've talked about, it says that basically he tells Moses to make an altar wherever he has made his name great, right? So he's like, wherever I've done something, wherever I've shown up, wherever I've done something that made an impression on you, create an altar. Now, we don't create altars now.
Right.
That's a whole nother episode as well. But what you can do is remember what God has already done in your life, no matter how big, no matter how small. He's made his name known. And so something as small as like, I have a note every time I feel like God told me something or God said do this, and then I know like in 6 months I'm going to look back and be like, oh wow, that's why he said do this. I write it down.
Yeah, that's good.
Sometimes I forget, but I do my best to like be like, oh, this is what I heard, or like I know this is going to be important later, and I write these things down. Whenever I see God work in my life or something, whatever, just write it down. And I think that's a way of like creating this little memorial stone that you can go back to whenever you feel far from God, or you feel like I'm not hearing him, he's not talking to me, whatever. Go back to what he's already said, which is essentially reading his word. So whether you have a note of what he's spoken to you or you just go read the Bible, you're reading the word of God. Right. And you can remind yourself of what he's already done. Strengthen yourself, essentially, so you can keep going, because this is a marathon, right? Not a sprint. We're going to have those seasons where we like, man, I feel like I'm not hearing him, or I feel like I'm a little distant, or like, I don't know what happened or whatever. And writing these things down and reading the things that he did for Israel, which, because we've been grafted into the family, it applies for us too. We just need to remind ourselves.
And we can easily forget that when we're going through something hard or whatever. Or it's been a while, that we haven't, maybe not something significant, like, something big. But yeah, you're right. Like, we need to create or do things that can work for our lives. So we're reminded. And of course, reading the word. I think anytime as you're reading the word, you're reminded, and you read these stories and God speaks to you through your life as you're going through situations. So I think the more you read the Bible, like, you read certain verses and that reminds you of a time that, oh yeah, God was there and he did this. And this was a verse he gave me to, like, give me strength and remind me of, that he was there and he wasn't going to leave me. Oh, this was another verse where I really related because, I was really suffering, and this talks about suffering and how God's going to bring you out. Like, there's so many times. That's why it's so important to just continue to be in the word, because the word itself will remind you both of what's happened, right, to people in the Bible, but also within your own life, because God strengthens you as you're going through things in your life. So as you read it again, you're reminded of those things. And so that's beautiful that God can bring those back and just continue to fortify and strengthen your life through his word.
Yeah. And I think in addition to that, the last thing that I wanted to say was that when we see the Israelites bamboozle the Moses and even kind of bamboozling Aaron, really, and just kind of getting interwoven in this mess or whatever, although he does it willingly, but still they could have made their own calf, you know what I mean? They didn't have to go up to the priest and be like, hey.
It was kind of like they wanted that pass, like, we're about to be doing this, like,
like, hey, what do you think, But what I see is that because the Levites were a part of it, right? They're a part of the tribe. They're a part of the Israelites. And so they're all like they're in this like hodgepodge of randomness that they started to do to worship this calf or whatever. But what it shows us, like, when Moses comes down, he breaks the tablets, he's all up in a huff. And he says, who's on the Lord's side? Right?
Oh, yeah.
Which is the same thing that Joshua does again in Joshua 24:15, right? Choose for yourself the God you will serve on this day.
Yeah, that's true.
And what this shows me is that, yes, we will mess up, right? And we will do things that will line up with the world rather than with God. But after you do that, if you are a child of God, you have a choice.
Yes, very much
You can go back to God like the Levites did. Or you can be one of like an unrepentant Israelite and be like, I'm cool. You know what I'm saying?
True.
So that's what this story also shows us. It's like, there's always a choice. Like, I remember when we went through Freedom, it's this small group thing that our church used to do, or that our church currently does. I remember reading something, and what came to me is that when you do something wrong, right? When you know that you sinned and you've interrupted your fellowship with God because you created a separation, because you did something wrong, the speed of the bounce back of your relationship with God depends on you.
Yes, very much so.
So you can continue to expand that separation, or you can sin and bounce back immediately and being God, Lord, I know I did that. So you can confess, I confess that was wrong and I repent, and you physically like turn from it and you're like, I won't do that again. If it's a struggle, you have to ask him to help you. You create boundaries and you do all of these things, but it really depends on you. And that's what this shows us. Like, that's what the Levites did. They're like, man, we messed up, but no, I'm on the Lord's side.
Right, because we don't know the extent of their involvement. Like, they could have just been like, kind of like Aaron, and been like, yeah, all right, y'all can do your little calf thing and that makes you comfortable. But they were still in the mix, right? They were still in the mix. They weren't standing up. No one was like, we need to stop this. No, don't do the calf. They were in it, right? Like, whether they were participants,
an active participant or a passive participant,
but they were in the mix. But you're right. Yeah. Like, the moment they had the opportunity, and kind of Moses was like the voice of God, or voice of reason, or kind of like snapped them out of like, hey, like, what are y'all doing? Like, who's going to serve the Lord? Oh, no. Yeah. I see that I was wrong. So like, I'm going to separate from that. I'm going to turn and I'm going to make, and they took actually, Moses like, come closer, come to me or whatever. And so they did. They had to, like, the people were going to see them like, hey, but you were just like partying with me a second ago. But it's like, yeah, and that was wrong. I shouldn't have been doing that. So I'm going to take a step and be like, no, I'm on the Lord's side. I'm going to serve the Lord. So,
yep. And that's what we do, like, daily, because we have to, I'm going to state the obvious. We're not out here killing our friends and our family and such, as the Levites did, right?
Or building golden calves.
That was what the Lord, that was what the Lord told them to do. However, we know that, like Jesus says that the word, right? He is the word, he's the living word, but the word separates joint and marrow, sister and mother and da-da-da-da, and it like separates. And that's what they use to kill all of these people. So as you choose the Lord, you will also have to separate from people that are unbelievers, or from people that are leading you back to the old ways, or all of these things. So although this was real, it can also be figurative and metaphorical, in the sense of like, when you choose the Lord, you have to, it comes with consequences, essentially.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to stand to those consequences.
And you have to kill what it is that's separating you from God. So if that's a habit, right? If that's a habit, then you need to cut with that habit. If that's a relationship, then you need to cut with the relationship. You know, whatever that is that's doing it, like there has to be death in order for you to like be able to serve God, because sin is death. So you need to separate yourself from what's killing you, basically. And like here they did it actually. But for us, it's like, what am I choosing? What was I doing that got me separated from God? Like, what sin was I committing, or what was I focusing on that wasn't God? And now I need to separate that from my life. And you know, that's our separation, what we need to kill essentially in our lives.
Yeah, that's like what came to me as like the name of the episode. It's like, you have to kill in order to be able to live. Right? You have to like kill the old you in order to live in eternity for God, in order to live as a new creation. You have to kill all of these things, and we have to continuously kill and die and kill and die and kill and die in order to live. But yeah, that was good.
That was. So don't be bamboozled.
That was good, man. Don't be bamboozled. And if you are bamboozled, or you do bamboozle, choose God.
Come back.
Yes.
Commit back.
Yes. Be like the Levites. Yes. And I will say be like the Levites in this specific scenario, because the Levites kind of do strange things in the Old Testament also. Yeah. So in this specific scenario, choose God like the Levites.
Yes. Just come back to God.
Oh, man. But yeah, just come back to God. Just come back to God. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. This was such a good one.
Yeah.
And that sounds biased, and that sounds like, oh, it was going to be a good one. We really don't. Yeah. You know, we plan these episodes, and once we talk about it and we actually get into the conversation, because we don't actually talk about the episode. We choose the topic, but we don't talk about the episode until we record. Mm-hmm. And so it's just as good for us as it is for you, because we don't actually know what's going to happen.
And I know we say that with a lot of episodes, but each of them brings something. I'm just going to be honest. Like,
always.
So like when we're done, we're like, that was good. Like God really, talked to us. He really brought a message. Like he revealed something. So like we are blessed every time we do these episodes. So when we say like, this was the best, or this was so good, it's because we've received something. So we really do believe that. Like, we really are. And we really do think this is one of the best. So.
Yeah. No, that was good. That was not a turn we were expecting to take. Like, that was just the Holy Spirit leading us and what was coming to us at the time. And man, this telling you, this podcast is really more for us than it is for you. I hope you really do enjoy it, but it's so fruitful for us and for it's just like you're basically eavesdropping on our Bible study.
Yeah,
this is literally what's
join
happening.
Our Bible study. Basically.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, man, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope you learned more about Moses and the golden calf. If you didn't know about it already, I hope it interests you enough for you to just crack open a Bible.
Yeah, or if you had like heard about it and weren't really sure, like, oh yeah, I remember hearing about there was a golden calf when, with Moses or some kind of relation there. Now you know.
So we hope that you enjoyed this episode. Again, this is all in the book of Exodus, and we hope that you read it. If you have any questions, or if you have any suggestions, or if we said anything that you're like, I'm gonna need y'all to talk more about that, please let us know. We are on all the platforms, on all the things. All you have to do is go into the show notes, and all of our links are there. Yeah, we hope that you enjoyed it. As always, this is Fran.
This is Yadi.
We are the Midtown Misfits, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.